Hello and welcome to today's Medical World News, where we provide you with the latest news across a variety of healthcare specialties and a number of interviews with experts in the medical field, many of which are focused on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I'm your host today, Gina Morrow. Today we'll get updates from Pharmacy Times, Targeted Oncology, Patient Care, Infection Control Today, Psychiatric Times, Dental Products Report, and the Center for Biosimilars. We can't wait to see what the big news is today. Let's kick it off with Pharmacy Times. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Aislinn Antrim from Pharmacy Times. Before we get started today, one of our top stories right now is about how non-oral pre-exposure prophylaxis options may improve patient adherence. So there's more about that on Pharmacy Times. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Peter Bonis, Chief Medical Officer of Clinical Effectiveness at Wolters Kluwer Health, about the importance of uniting prescribers and pharmacists at the point of care. So Dr. Bonis, clinical decision-making can be a complicated process in health systems involving formularies and prescribers and pharmacists. There's a whole slew of people involved. How can these decision makers work together?
It's a challenge and one that's potential to worsen as new healthcare delivery models drive patients to varied sites of care like telehealth and urgent care, retail settings, and others. So care coordination, gaps in care, all of the potential to become increasingly challenging as patients try to navigate through all these different healthcare settings. There are several approaches that can help. One of them is to ensure that all of the stakeholders, so caregivers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health professionals, and the patients themselves, share a common understanding of evidence-based and contemporary approaches to care. So content resources, decision support, care protocols, patient education efforts should ideally be harmonized to help drive towards more standardized evidence-based care.
Absolutely. Why is it important for prescribers to stay on formulary whenever possible?
Yeah, so there has been some debate about the net benefits, but there are three major reasons. So number one is costs, number two, appropriateness, and the third is safety. So formulary decisions have ideally been chosen carefully by multidisciplinary teams who consider all these factors in the hope to help drive the ecosystem towards more safe and cost-effective care. So formulary adherence is more important now than ever, particularly on the cost side. So hospital drug spending increased nearly 19% between 2015 and 2017 and continues to rise, and almost 30% in the ambulatory setting. On appropriateness, many studies continue to demonstrate that drug choices are not always applied optimally to specific care settings. So restricted formulary choices can help to sharpen decision-making. And finally, on safety, a constrained formulary helps organizations to be familiar with the existing complement of drugs, potentially helping to make sure that they're used safely. There's more than 360,000 patients who have suffer preventable drug events in the inpatient setting each year, even more so on the ambulatory side. So much more needs to be done, but formulary adherence is certainly part of that solution.
Definitely. We often think of prescribers making the decision and pharmacists sort of administering the drugs, handling adverse events, and that sort of thing. But how important is it for pharmacists to be involved in the actual decision making, and how can care teams better include pharmacists?
Yeah, sure. So pharmacists work in many settings, so hospitals and PBMs and in retail. In many cases, they are the final or nearly the final stop before a patient is going to ingest a drug. So they're instrumental in making sure that patients receive drugs alone or in combination that are both safe and effective. So, and the complexity is getting worse. So many new types of drugs are available, and we're at the same time, we're getting a more detailed understanding of patient characteristics that should guide their use. My own experience in rounding with pharmacists as part of the team in the inpatient setting proved repeatedly to me how valuable their insights and involvement can be to help deliver the best possible care.
Absolutely. What strategies can health systems employ to keep prescribers and pharmacists united with these issues?
Yeah, so we've already discussed this a bit in the context of harmonizing content across stakeholders, but let me be even more specific about it. So an improved dose or indication for a drug does not necessarily mean that the drug is the best choice for the situation. So drug information resources and decision support should ideally provide guidance that enables the entire care team to understand the best decisions for patients. That creates checks and balances, and those checks and balances make it more likely that patients will receive the best options.
That's so important. What logistical issues should management consider in order to make these changes and successfully implement them?
So it's important to understand that information related to prescribing is highly dynamic. So processes need to be in place to ensure that the drug information, the associated decision support, and the formulary decisions are curated and done so continuously and then disseminated. So internal process controls combined with the right content and information technology can certainly help.
Definitely. Many hospitals do have some sort of decision support solutions for prescribers, but in some cases they can be outdated. They're not updated as often as they should be. Can you talk about these issues?
Yeah, so decision support will not be successful unless it is trusted, helpful, non-intrusive, and it has to be artfully inserted into the workflow. So each of these domains is complex. Trust in particular is hard won. So caregivers, they have to be confident in the integrity of the resources, in its transparency. It has to be useful. And if it's not, they won't rely on it. On the technology side, there's some simple things that can help though. For example, when you have clinical guidance, how about just linking that directly to local formulary availability? It takes a lot of the friction and the effort out of the system to prescribe the right drugs.
Absolutely. Well, finally, what is the value of pharmacists in these situations when careful decision making is just so important?
So I want to make that plea on that point again that I meant earlier. So pharmacists are the final stop before a patient receives a medication. There can be no more critical role in the therapeutic access to ensure that patients receive safe and effective care. So we should ideally continue to build systems that enable pharmacists that they have to have the time and they have to have the tools needed to perform this critical function as well as possible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. Now we're going to hear from some of our other MJH Life Sciences brands on their latest headlines.
Thank you.
That was a great interview. Thank you. Targeted Oncology is ready now to deliver all sorts of oncology updates. What do you have for us today?